Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to be taking a really fascinating look at the evolutionary ladder. Honestly, you can kind of think of it as tracking biology's biggest, upgrades. Starting from the absolute simplest, jawless creatures swimming around in ancient oceans, all the way up to incredibly complex, warm-blooded mammals. Oh, and definitely stick around to the end, because we're going to wrap up with a massive reproductive plot twist that you probably won't see coming.
Okay, let's just quickly glance at our roadmap for today. First, we'll cover fish, both jawless and jawed. Second, amphibians and their transition to land. Third, reptiles, which are our true terrestrial animals. Fourth, birds and mammals, the warm-blooded ones. And finally, number 5, nature's ultimate twist, parthenogenesis.
Right, so before we actually start climbing this ladder, we kind of need to establish what unites every single animal we're talking about today. And it's this. They all belong to the subphylum Vertebrata. So the absolute crucial point here is that whether it's a fish, a frog, a soaring eagle, or, you, all of these creatures possess a backbone or a spinal column. Plus, they all share a closed blood circulation system. That backbone is essentially the foundational chassis that nature just keeps modifying and upgrading over time. So let's jump right into section 1, fish, jawless and jawed. We're starting our journey way back with a class called Cyclostomata. These are some of the most primitive vertebrates out there. Basically, they're jawless ectoparasites that latch onto other fishes. Think of things like the lamprey or the hagfish. They're pretty simple and rock a basic two-chambered heart. But, evolution doesn't just stop there. Moving up a step to superclass Pisces, we got a major upgrade. These are your true fishes. And suddenly, boom, we see the introduction of jaws and scales. Now, just like the jawless fish, they're still working with that two-chambered heart and breathing entirely through their gills.
And that brilliantly illustrates the next major split in the vertebrate family tree, happening right there within the true fishes. On one hand, we've got chondrichthyes. These are your sharks and sawfish. They have a cartilaginous skeleton and a mouth located on the ventral side, underneath. But here's the crazy catch with them. They actually don't have an air bladder, which literally means they have to swim continuously or they'll sink straight to the bottom. Wild, right? On the flip side, we have osteichthyes, the bony fishes. Think seahorses or flying fish. They've developed a bony endoskeleton, a terminal mouth at the front, and crucially, an air bladder. That little addition gives them totally effortless buoyancy control.
All right, moving on to section 2, amphibians in their transition to land. This is where the evolutionary story literally gets legs. Let's see how this builds up in class Amphibia. These creatures, like your frogs and salamanders, they're the ultimate bridge between two completely different worlds. They develop two pairs of limbs so they can actually crawl out of the water, but they still live a dual life. See, respiration happens through gills when they're hanging out in the water, but once they're on land, they switch to breathing through lungs. And to support this way more demanding amphibious lifestyle, their cardiovascular system gets a serious engine upgrade to a 3-chambered heart. Which brings us to section 3. Reptiles are true terrestrial animals. Class Reptilia marks a massive, absolutely crucial milestone. These are the very first truly terrestrial animals. And why is that? Because they are the first vertebrates to lay their eggs on land, totally freeing them from needing a body of water just to reproduce. Animals like turtles, tortoises, and snakes fall right into this category. They feature a tympanum, which essentially represents their ears, and they remain cold-blooded, still operating with that 3-chambered heart. But wait a second, because biology absolutely loves a rule breaker. Crocodiles and alligators, yes, they are absolutely reptiles, but they have somehow managed to evolve a 4-chambered heart. It's just a fascinating little exception that perfectly shows how nature is constantly experimenting and pushing its own biological boundaries.
Let's just pause for a second to really appreciate this whole engine upgrade analogy. We started with Pisces, equipped with a simple 2-chambered heart, which is perfectly fine for a chill, cold-blooded life in the water. Then Amphibia and Reptilia stepped it up, right? They moved to a 3-chambered heart for crawling up onto land, though they're still cold-blooded. And finally, Aves and Mammalia, birds and mammals, they feature this highly complex, highly efficient 4-chambered heart. This ultimate upgrade is exactly what allows them to be warm-blooded or homeotherms, giving them the sheer energy to be highly active in practically any environment on Earth.
So let's dive into section 4, birds and mammals, getting into that warm-blooded territory. The biological divide we're looking at here is incredibly stark. Pretty much everything we've discussed so far, fishes, amphibians, reptiles, they're all cold-blooded.
But aves and mammals, they've crossed this massive threshold into being warm-blooded. Basically, this means they can regulate their own internal body temperature, totally regardless of whatever the weather is doing outside.
For class Aves, the birds, that four-chambered heart is what provides the frankly incredible amount of energy needed for sustained flight. And their physical adaptations? Just mind-blowing. Their forelimbs are completely modified into wings, and their jaws have developed into a beak. But here is the most fascinating part about their engineering. To actually get airborne, you have to shed a ton of weight. So their long bones are actually hollow. They're just filled with air. They even possess only one ovary just to reduce their overall body weight. Nature is incredibly, almost ruthlessly efficient when it comes to flight.
And now we arrive at class Mammalia, which of course is your classification. These are the traits that define us: the presence of mammary glands, having hair on our skin, a diaphragm to help us breathe, that super powerful four-chambered heart, and being viviparous, which just means we give birth to live young rather than laying eggs. These are the specific characteristics that allow mammals to thrive absolutely everywhere, from the deepest oceans to the highest mountain peaks. But of course, just when you think you've got the rules all figured out, nature throws us yet another curveball. The platypus and porcupines are these incredibly strange exceptions because they actually lay eggs. It's such a great reminder that evolution isn't always some straight, predictable line. It's this messy, branching, totally wonderful tree. And that brings us to Section 5, Nature's Twist, Parthenogenesis. Up until now, almost every single class we've discussed has been listed as dioecious, which is just a fancy way of saying they have separate male and female sexes. So, here's a question for you. Does reproduction always require two parents? I mean, it seems like a biological absolute, right? Well, the answer to that question is a resounding no. Enter parthenogenesis. This is an asexual mode of reproduction where completely new offspring develop entirely from a single unfertilized gamete. Essentially, we are talking about literal virgin births happening in nature. Now, this mind-bending mechanism occurs in plants, sure, but also in insects and even vertebrates. For instance, in honeybees, parthenogenesis is what leads to the production of male drones from completely unfertilized eggs. But it actually gets wilder. In a very specific type of bee called the Cape honeybee, the females are produced through parthenogenesis. And in other varieties of organisms, like aphids, either sex can be produced this way depending on the situation. Let's bring this incredible twist right back to our vertebrate ladder for a second, because we aren't just talking about tiny insects here. Some lower vertebrates, like certain fishes and reptiles, also exhibit parthenogenesis. Think about that for a second. That means there are complex, multi-chambered heart animals crawling and swimming around right now that were born from just a single unfertilized cell, no male required. We have climbed an incredibly fascinating ladder today. I mean, we started way down in the water with jawless fish relying on simple two-chambered hearts. We crawled onto land with the amphibians, evolved into warm-blooded mammals rocking high-performance four-chambered hearts, and finally realized that nature can literally bypass standard reproduction entirely. If life can constantly rewrite its own rules, from building complex hearts to essentially cloning itself, what evolutionary upgrade could possibly come next? It's exactly this kind of mystery that makes the study of biology endlessly fascinating. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. And hey, always keep questioning the world around you.